Public Education Advocates. We're so excited to share with you some of our thoughts that came up yesterday in our retreat, where we really just talked about what we want to do this coming year, and I guess Dina will help us with, she'll keep us hopefully focused a little bit on what our agenda was and make sure that we cover most of everything that we can. Yeah. Just to kind of let you know that we're letting the cat out of the bag, because we really have no secrets. We want you all to be part of this movement and to contribute to our thinking too.
Yep. So we started out yesterday just with reviewing our mission and goals and the structure that we've had. Our mission, as you all know, is that we are a statewide, nonpartisan coalition advocating for a quality public education for every child to ensure a strong future for Alaska. And our goals are adequate, predictable, and stable funding for the BSA, for our schools, at levels comparable to 2011. We want public funds to go exclusively to public schools, and we would very much like to engage the entire community in our educational efforts here in the state. Community members, leaders, educators, families, to really get the most effective education we can for our kids.
And there was some comment too about the mission, for one thing. There was someone mentioned that let's remember too that in some school neighborhoods there may be more need than in others. Right. And we want to make sure to be cognizant of that so that every child really has the same chance to reach their full potential. Right. And the other commentary that we had was a little bit of discussion too around the BSA level at $2011, whether or not that's the exact right number, and that's something we'll get into later, because that was a really good discussion.
Yeah, it was.
We talked a little bit about our accomplishments from last year, and of course one of the big things we did was followed what was going on during the legislative session and let everybody know what was going on and made sure there was no shell game activity happening. We also started partnering more with Alaska PTA, which we're very excited about, and the NAACP. We did do more outreach within the community to try to get more people involved in schools and knowledgeable about what's going on with our schools throughout the state.
And I think we should share too that we also talked about the idea that we failed in some ways. We thought we could have done a lot better. We failed in that somehow we didn't get the point across to the governor, and so he felt like he could set the tone of the last year's budget with cutting 10% of our education fund, and then they ended up taking, the legislature took 90% of the rest of it. Right. So, we weren't feeling real good, I don't think, to be honest, about how that went. Wish we had done better.
We definitely do, because what happened the year before when we got our 3-year agreement was that we felt that we had provided some stability, or that the legislature through that 3-year agreement had provided some stability to our schools throughout the state, and that was destroyed.
They decided not to honor that.
But I do think with us being there and being present, we might not have gotten what we got. So I think we've got to look at
We did hear that too, and that's important to recognize. Right. But I also think we ought to be honest with ourselves. Right. In fact, that brought up one of our really good discussions with, how can we make sure to focus our discussion in ways that will give the legislators the kind of language that they need and understand in order to support public education, because as we've all heard, they all really do say they support it. Right. And that gets me back to that 2011 BSA number, if you don't mind. Can we just cut into that?
Sure.
And then we'll go back to that. So we kind of had a sidetrack discussion about what will it take for us to be
providing an adequate education.
Right, a good advocate. And interestingly, I felt one of the main discussions was, well, if you look at it nationally, remember we had some people who had really studied this up, they said, well, there's so many lawsuits, and that's not what we want in Alaska.
No, we want to be ahead of the game.
Exactly, and we're going to lose 10 years of our children's education if we have to get down that road.
Right.
So we don't want to be caught up in a lawsuit. We don't know if that's the exact right number that they've assigned for the BSA.
Right, and to just clarify, the lawsuits that are going on in the other states are where the state is being sued because they're not providing an adequate education to their children.
Right.
And we would like to make sure that our state does provide adequate education to our students here throughout the state, so that we don't end up in a situation where we get sued.
But I think we decided, that one of our best roles as advocates would be to encourage the local school districts to really study up on best practices and costs. So
Right.
what will that cost, and then help us to come up with that number and help us to be able to educate the public and the legislators to know that, so that they're ready.
And use that as our message, that,
Yeah.
you know, we do have a number now, and it is from ASD. They've
Right.
gone out, and maybe it's not right down to the penny, but that's not what we
No.
need. We just need ASD to give us a number as to what they need to provide an adequate education for each child.
Right, and that there's some assurance that they've really studied that
Right.
up.
Right.
That, yeah, so that's kind of positive though.
Yes,
And the
very.
other positive piece was we heard from educators that our work has helped them to know that despite all of the sound bites they're hearing from various groups, that they are appreciated. And we feel like that is really important work too, right?
And we want to continue that, most definitely.
Okay, keep us on track, Dina.
Okay.
What else did we do?
So then we also got an update from the state PTA, and we also got an update from the Anchorage School District.
On the PTA piece, I felt like that was a really great conversation, because we kind of talked about how that body is so important, has so much potential, particularly in light of their national resources,
Yep.
and how we would like to support them in more ways and see how we can better utilize our partnership. So
Yep.
that was really good conversation.
And we were just excited to hear that the state PTA is focusing a little bit more on advocacy now.
Yeah.
Yes.
The leadership
Right.
is changing, and advocacy is one of their prime areas that they would like to focus on.
Mhm. And a little discussion about PTSO versus PTA,
Right,
the idea that
right.
PTA has this unique element
Of the national support. Yep.
and
And
of
the advocacy.
advocacy, that
Yep.
it's not just a money-making
Yep.
group. So anyway, that was exciting.
And you can join a PTA without having a child in that school to
Right.
support PTA.
Some
Yeah.
some of us were wondering about that, because our school doesn't necessarily have that.
Right.
And we found out we can, and community members can too.
Yes.
So that's great.
Yep. Then we spent the rest of the meeting really talking about our goals and priorities for the coming year. What do we want to focus on? And we split up into 4 different groups, and we were supposed to spend 20 minutes, and we spent about 35 minutes or 40 minutes just talking about what we would really like to try to focus on
Right.
for the coming year. And we came up with some really nice ideas for what we can do this coming year. So,
Do you want to walk through a couple of them then? Do you want to walk through one group,
Start
and then
out
we'll
in-
just go through? Do you have group 1? Start?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
I just have to find the right page, I'm sorry. Group 1, so again, you know, we talked about NAACP is working with 2 legislators on a bill to provide reading specialists around the state for kids that are below standards.
How we might support that.
yes,
Right. Yeah.
yes.
That was interesting discussion.
Yeah, and then, you know, one of the things that was brought up too is maybe discover some of the objectives of some of our conservative legislators and work with them.
Because there's common ground, we know.
yeah.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about group 2, Dina?
sure. Again, to the point of what does it really take to provide what we think is an adequate and effective education for our students, we'd really like to work closely with the ASD to try to figure out what that number might be.
Right.
So that when the legislators say, well, how much does it really cost to provide a good education to our children, we have the answer to that. And again, it gets us ahead of possible litigation, court cases. And we'd really like to try to make sure that we are not subject to being sued for not providing
Right.
that. There's also talk about trying to connect with other organizations so that we can really boost the impact that we have, because there are a lot of groups that are focused on helping to support our children.
And maybe where we can, it would consolidate some of our actions.
Right.
So that'd be nice.
Yep.
And group 3, they came up with quite a few action ideas too. One is around voter registration, and really just helping people with feeling their civic duty
Right.
about being aware of issues and participating. So there's an initiative going out right now that's tied to PFD,
Right.
with an opt-out if you don't want
Right.
to. But anyway, that was exciting to our group. And then in the local area, of course, the ASD, there's a couple of studies we'd like to make sure we understand well. We're looking at also looking at the state of the student right now.
Yeah.
What can we do to really learn about how our classes are going right now, and make sure that kids, and maybe we'll take a survey and see that how it's going with class sizes, how it's going with substitute teachers, all the things that we know were issues last year. We thought we'd just do a little quick check-in. We thought we'd also ask some of the folks that we know who are better attached to that, the CFO at ASD and perhaps other board members and such, a little bit more detail about that. That group 3 also thought of some statewide issues. One of them is around making sure that our statewide Great Alaska Schools feels better connected, and kind of making that connection strong this year, because we do have quite a few folks all over Alaska, and we want to make sure everyone feels like we're speaking in bed. Also meeting with the key leaders in Alaska, legislators, along with the governor's administration.
Right.
Just have nice conversations with them, listen as much as anything else.
Right.
Yep.
So we're hoping to do that before things get busy in their world as far as the session goes. And then that group came up with quite a few individuals also who are connected to education that are community members. And so we want to make sure to schedule those appointments and listen.
Right.
And also there's a statewide group they call the AASB, Alaska School Board, that we might be able to connect with this year. And other groups that are thinking and talking about the state fiscal situation.
Right.
We wanted to make sure to support that, as we know that our gap is serious, it's real, and what are we willing to give up? And
Right.
of course, we don't think education should be on that table, but it's important that we're part of the conversation and help the public to know how they need to be
Right.
a part of it.
Yep.
It's going to be hard thinking about revenue and which stream we want to go into. So.
Well, I think it's important too when we talk about our ask is it's not how much can we afford to spend on education, but how much we can afford not to spend on education.
Good point.
Yeah.
How much we need to spend to keep
Right.
our students.
Schools going.
Yep. And then group 4 talked a little bit more about some of the other things that we've already touched upon, but one of the things that they reminded us about is making sure that we have the stories about what's going on in each individual school, and talking to teachers, talking to parents, talking to students about what really is going on within the school, and where there are needs, where there are things that are going really well, and where there are things that really need to be addressed.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
There's talk about maybe advocating for a volunteer coordinator even in that role, who could help make sure we're connecting the resources to what's needed.
Yeah.
I think that's exciting.
Yeah, we have one school, for an example, that gets 2 volunteer hours a week, which could really, benefit from that.
Whereas other schools get hundreds of hours a week.
Hundreds and hundreds.
And then we don't want to forget that we'd really like to get more high school students involved.
Right,
Yes.
that came up quite a bit because we know from previously years, and some of them have graduated.
Right.
Boy, they've really kick-started a lot of conversations, and they just approach things in cool ways.
Yeah.
So it'd be fun to see how that goes.
It would.
But this segues nicely into our announcement about our next meeting,
Right.
Where everybody is invited. We've taken from these, from our meeting, and we rolled into some ideas of some action groups that we're going to form. We have a meetup once a month always.
Yep.
And this time, we're encouraging everyone to show up or give us a call if they're interested in any of these action groups. The action groups were, let's see, one is if you wanted to help and be a part of the PFD voter initiative training. One is something we're calling the talk and share, and that's kind of the story capturing.
Right.
Yeah, and that's with, hopefully teachers, parents, even administration, anyone who wants to just come and share good things, share whatever it is that they want to share about what's happening right now. And another group is the work of determining the cost, what that dollar figure is, and making sure that we help educate others about that. And then there's getting a snapshot of ASD schools. That would involve maybe some surveying and putting that together in a packaged way that we can help the public to understand. And then lastly, it's just growing us more, helping to be at fun events, runs, or at the grocery store, or wherever we go help people know that being a part of this group is fun.
Yeah.
We have moms, dads, grandparents, business leaders.
Hopefully lots of students.
That's what we're trying to encourage. And by the way, thanks to Parker for being our
Yes.
film director today.
Thanks, Parker.
Anyway, so that's coming up, and the date is September 23rd.
It's going to be Wednesday, September 23rd. We're hoping to do it back at Tidal Wave Bookstore in their little meeting area in the front, and we're looking at a time from 6 to 7:30 p.m. So if you're concerned about schools, if you want to get involved in any of these activities, come along. And if you have other ideas, we would love to have you join us.
And it is a work session, so make sure you come ready to roll up your sleeves.
You bet. And let me just also do one quick pitch to for this Leaders in the Schools. You see that on a previous post on Facebook, and there's a link for that. But this is happening real soon, like this week.
Yeah.
So if you'd like to be a part of that, make sure to go online, and it's just an opportunity to get into school and spend quality time there. Is there
Yeah.
anything else we're missing as far as announcements for folks?
So.
We're excited. We had
are.
almost 20 people there that were just part of the core group. Those are people who spend more than 3 hours a month thinking about this kind of work.
And we did invite anybody who wanted to come to this meeting.
And more are welcome to join.
So we had a
Yes.
couple of people who have not been to any of our meetings before, which was very exciting.
was
And we
fun.
always are excited to see new faces and fresh energy
Woo!
and,
Yeah.
and get some new ideas. So
Yep. Go public schools.
Yay!
Thanks so much.